Whenever I feel like there's chaos going on, I retreat. Working with my hands gives me a little bit of solace and peace, and just time to sort out or even escape my thoughts. Knitting for me is a complete opposite of my personality. Knitting requires patience, time, planning, and those three elements is something that I do every day in my 9 to 5. And I'm really freaking good at it. But when it comes to doing things for myself, I am messy, impatient, and very high-tempered. Impatience is really the dominant force of everything. So when I turned to the fiber arts, it required me to be patient, to slow down, and to plan. And all of those things were required in order for me to get what I wanted to achieve with my own two hands. I had to slow down and really face disappointment over and over and over again. Knitting is rewarding, don't get me wrong. Even during times of frustration, you can still feel accomplished. Mistakes are completely common. And over the years, I learned that I love to share my learning lessons with other people. In fact, I am kind of an oversharer. So I thought, why not make a series about it? Why not share all of the notes that I have while knitting into a little tiny program, doing the things that I love, which is filmmaking and knitting and crafting other things. And so with that, I present to you Notes from a Knitter. Over the past few years I've been a knitter, I have learned a thing or two about fit. One of the hardest lessons I have experienced would be spending a lot of time on a garment, and I mean hours, weeks, months, only to discover that it's too tight or too big. Typically when this happens, I go through the 3 stages of knitter's grief. 1. Denial. 2. Avoidance. 3. Abandon. So when I found the most beautiful sweater and met the coolest yarn dyer, it was time for me to get my shit together and finally figure out how to get, you guessed it, gauge. Yes, my friends, we are talking about one of the most debated words in the knitting community. Some people don't believe in it, some people love it, and some people would rather die by jumping headfirst into a volcano. So what is gauge? Gauge is a knitted piece of fabric, usually a 4x4 square, that you knit to determine fit. You can measure the number of stitches and rows per inch. You knit it based on how the garment will be knit as well. So either if it's in the round, you knit this in the round, you knit it flat, which means you knit on one side, purl on one side, or do garter stitch, which is knit on both sides. Or you can do the pattern that is called, that really sometimes comes in when there's lace in the pattern, or just a specific kind of repeat that's happening. Gauge is listed in every single pattern that you will buy. It will determine the size of your finished garment, and one haunting thing that I think about all the time is that if you have one stitch off within that 4-inch by 4-inch square, your garment can be way too big or way too small, because those stitches will multiply every 4 inches, either per row or per stitch, which is the other way. You knit it with the yarn you plan to use for your pattern or the yarn that the pattern calls for. Fun fact about me, I have never gotten gauge, nor have I had the patience to figure out why until this very garment. So knowing that I had to figure out how to get gauge, even though I've never gotten it before, I did what any sew knitter would do. I completely procrastinated. This bee sat on my shelf for a long time. To further avoid it, I knit a shawl for someone else. I knitted one whole ass sock, just one. I knit one reject garment, which I will not show just because, you guessed it, it doesn't fit. But now that I got all of that out of my system, I could finally sit down with the swatches of the past to figure out where I went wrong. And after examining and revisiting all of my past mistakes, I realized my purl stitches are too loose. So loose that it left all my swatches just a little bit too long and a little too narrow for some reason. Changing needles and switching out the yarn that the pattern called for didn't even help fix this problem in the past, so I knew that I had to do something different. Enter the Norwegian purl. The Norwegian purl is a purl stitch technique that keeps the working yarn in the back while purling continental style. It goes a little something like this. After practicing purling this way a few times, I got the hang of it. It actually felt way nicer on my hands than doing it the other way. My index finger would usually cramp up a little bit. This allowed me to keep the same tension that I had when doing the knit stitch as well. So the knit stitch and the purl stitch had the same amount of tension, and guess what? I got gauge. Ta-da! I did take a tequila shot to congratulate myself because I've been knitting for over 2.5 years, I think. Maybe. I haven't counted. And every single time I haven't gotten gauge and I've just said, screw it. I'm just going to knit the thing. And my garment comes out too small or too big. So this is really a big accomplishment for me after 2.5 years trying to do this. So my note for this episode is to just keep trying different techniques. See what works best for you. You might surprise yourself. You might figure out, oh, the way I've been doing this for 2 whole years, it's actually not the best way, and maybe I should just try something else. And then it clicks. So now I have knitted 3 pieces of this garment so far, and all I have left is the front to do, put it together, and I think add a collar is where we're at. So wish me luck. These items haven't been blocked yet. I'm still on track. I've checked what the gauge was before I blocked my test little gauge piece, and it's still on track. All the stitches are measuring out to be the same, so I think I'm going to have a beautiful piece in my closet very soon. Now that I can knit flat, I feel like the door has opened to so many other possibilities. I think that getting gauge is not for everyone. So don't feel pressured if you feel like you have to do it in order to knit. You don't have to. I just started and I got frustrated, and so I just decided that it was time to really try to get it to see if I could, not waste a lot of money on yarn that I purchased to knit something that I will never wear. But that's just me. You might do things differently. But if you haven't gotten it, I would suggest to try it again. Just to try it, and you might just surprise yourself with a new skill, just like I did.